Miles, you've known Leo Grant for years and you're deeply involved in the jazz scene. After looking through the new issue of Brassique, how do you think the magazine uses or challenges typical music magazine and jazz genre conventions?
Yeah, what really stood out to me was how Brassique keeps the core conventions of a music magazine but updates them for a new generation. For example, the front cover has Leo holding a saxophone in a close-up shot, which is a classic music magazine convention. In jazz especially, the instrument is almost like a symbol of authenticity. When you see the sax, you instantly know the genre and the skill behind it. It is what Roland Barthes would call a signifier. On the surface, it's just an instrument, but culturally, it represents tradition, talent, and jazz heritage. But what I like is that the magazine also challenges the typical look of jazz media. Older jazz magazines usually have darker colours, smoky club imagery, and serif fonts that feel quite vintage. Brassique flips that a bit. It uses a clean white background, bright lighting, and modern sans serif typography. That makes jazz feel fresh instead of old-fashioned. Even the cover line, Gen Jazz, bringing jazz back to life for a new generation, shows that they're trying to modernise the genre. So it's balancing tradition with innovation, which feels really true to how jazz itself works.
That's really interesting. Looking beyond the design, how do you think the magazine represents different social groups or issues within jazz culture?
One thing I noticed is how the magazine presents jazz musicians, especially Leo, as both aspirational and relatable. On the cover, he's making direct eye contact with the audience, which is a typical magazine convention because it creates a connection with the reader. But his expression is calm and natural, rather than overly glamorous. That fits with Richard Dyer's Star Theory. He's portrayed as talented and almost legendary, with cover lines like, "Inside the mind of a jazz legend," but he also feels like someone you could realistically look up to. What's important is that the magazine also pushes against stereotypes of jazz. Traditionally, people think of jazz musicians as older men playing in old clubs. Brassique shows Leo as a young, creative artist experimenting with the genre. Phrases like bending notes, bending rules, and find your own voice suggest that jazz is about individuality and expression, which connects strongly with youth culture. I also liked that the contents page includes female artists like Mary Lou and Elisa Cooper. Jazz has often been seen as male-dominated, so showing women as performers and creators helps challenge this stereotype. It makes the genre feel more inclusive and representative of the real modern jazz scene. On top of that, the magazine includes things like social media icons and a QR code, which suggests the audience isn't just a passive reader anymore. They're active fans who discover music online and engage with artists across platforms. So overall, I'd say Brassique respects the history of jazz, but represents it in a way that feels diverse, modern, and accessible for today's audiences. Nice.